What are the origins of the populist movement that swept Donald Trump into the White House? And can it last? Radio talk show host Laura Ingraham is here with analysis and a new book, Billionaire at the Barricades. And later, tension between the Republican Party and the Trump administration is on the rise. Is there a war between the GOP and the president? Wisconsin Congressman Sean Duffy will tell us. And finally, December is coming fast. To get you into the holiday spirit, we'll talk with one of the chart-topping Dominican Sisters of Mary about their new Christmas CD. The World Over starts right now.
Now, from Washington, D.C., Raymond Arroyo.
A warm welcome to all of you joining us in the United States and the world over. What a show tonight. Laura Ingraham, Congressman Sean Duffy, and Dominican sister Joseph Andrew are all straight ahead. How's that for a combo? If you'd like to comment on tonight's show, send us a tweet. I'm at Raymond Arroyo. I'll be live tweeting throughout, or you can email us at worldover@ewtn.com. Here's the brief news from the world over this week. President Donald Trump unilaterally delivered a shot across the bow of Obamacare this week. On Thursday, the president signed an executive order to make lower premium plans more widely available and permit purchasing health care across state lines. The move reflects Trump's long-standing belief that interstate competition will lead to lower premiums. The executive order will create competitors to the Obamacare marketplace and other insurance plans saddled by regulations. The president predicted millions and millions of people will benefit from his action to unwind the health care law.
This will create tremendous competition and transformative, in so many ways, change aimed at creating more and lower prices for millions of Americans. But the competition will be staggering. Insurance companies will be fighting to get every single person signed up. And you will be hopefully negotiating, and you'll get such low prices for such great care.
The executive order could take several months to implement and might not hit the open market until after 2018. And this past week, the Trump administration rolled back the contraceptive mandate of the Affordable Care Act. According to new rules established by the Department of Health and Human Services, employers can opt out of contraceptive coverage if they have a sincerely held religious or moral objection. That would include not just religiously affiliated employers, such as the Little Sisters of the Poor, but nonprofits and privately held companies as well. The U.S. Bishops' Conference offered tepid praise for the Trump decision. They said the exemption is no innovation, but instead a return to common sense, and that it, quote, should never have occurred or should never be repeated, end quote. Meanwhile, on the immigration front, President Trump is now pushing Congress for a comprehensive immigration package. This past weekend, he told congressional leaders that his immigration priorities must be enacted in exchange for extending deportation protections for young immigrants brought to the U.S. illegally as children, the so-called Dreamers. Among the measures, denying federal funds to sanctuary cities, workplace enforcement of immigration laws, enhanced border security, and funding of a wall on the southern border. Democrats say many of the measures Trump is calling for are off the table and are now threatening a government shutdown should Trump or congressional Republicans balk at passing Dreamer legislation. And Pope Francis says the death penalty is contrary to the gospel, and he's suggesting that a revision of the catechism might be necessary. On Wednesday, marking the 25th anniversary of the Catechism of the Catholic Church, the Pope said capital punishment seriously wounds human dignity and is an inhuman measure. The Catechism, issued in 1992 under St. John Paul II, recognized the right of the state to employ the death penalty while insisting that there are almost no moral reasons for doing so. This week, however, Pope Francis said, no matter how serious the crime committed, the death penalty is inadmissible because it attacks the inviolability and dignity of the person. The Pope concluded his remarks saying, the Word of God cannot be mothballed like some old blanket in an attempt to keep insects at bay. The Word of God is a dynamic and living reality and develops and grows because it's aimed at a fulfillment that none can halt. He underlined that doctrine cannot be preserved without allowing it to develop, nor can it be tied to an interpretation that is rigid and immutable without demeaning the working of the Holy Spirit. The times are a-changing. And an estimated 1 million Poles gathered at 4,000 locations along Poland's border to pray the Rosary this past Saturday. Rosary at the Borders was billed as an appeal to God and the Virgin Mary for the salvation of Poland and the world. But some in the media saw it as an anti-Islamic event, a resistance to the flood of Muslim immigrants who've spread across other parts of Europe. The unprecedented event was organized by lay faithful and endorsed by 22 Polish dioceses. They insisted that the rally was not directed at any group, but was to commemorate the centenary of the apparitions of Our Lady of Fatima. However, the rally was also held on the anniversary of the Battle of Lepanto, when a Christian alliance defeated Ottoman Empire forces. That decisive victory saved Western Europe from a Muslim onslaught. And a major change is coming to the Boy Scouts of America, and they don't get any bigger. Starting next year, the Boy Scouts will begin to admit girls. In the latest of a series of fundamental changes for the 100-year-old organization, once considered a bastion of tradition, under the new expansion plan, the Cub Scout program for children aged 7 to 10 would be open to girls beginning in 2018. A program for older girls will start in 2019, enabling them to earn the same vaunted Eagle Scout rank as other scouts. The Girl Scouts are decrying the policy change, claiming that the Boy Scouts are recruiting girls to make up for the boys that have abandoned the organization. During the past 5 years, the Scouts have agreed to accept openly gay youth members and adult volunteers, as well as transgender boys. There are no plans to change its name. And Leonardo da Vinci's masterwork painting of Christ Jesus is going to auction. Christie's auction house announced Salvator Mundi will be offered November 15th in New York. The painting dates to around 1500. It's one of less than 20 known paintings by Leonardo, and the only one in private hands. Until it was rediscovered and authenticated in 2005, the work was believed to have been lost or destroyed, as layers of paint had concealed the original brushstrokes of Leonardo. After being passed down and sold to various French and British royals and nobles, in 1956, it was sold for a mere £45. This time around, Salvator Mundi is expected to fetch upwards of $100 million. That would be a record auction price for a religious work. And the dispute over the final resting place of Archbishop Fulton Sheen continued in a New York courtroom this week. The trustees of St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York filed an appeal to a 2016 court decision which approved the removal of Sheen's remains to St. Mary's Cathedral in Peoria, Illinois, the Archbishop's hometown. The Venerable Fulton Sheen's cause for canonization is currently suspended because the Archdiocese of New York won't release his body. Oral arguments were heard in the matter on Tuesday, but so far, no decision has been reached. In 2002, the Diocese of Peoria was assured by the late Edward Cardinal Egan that Sheen's remains would be returned to them so that the cause for sainthood could proceed. As a historical note, the Sheen family gave permission to the Archdiocese of New York to inter Archbishop Sheen at St. Patrick's Cathedral. Sheen himself had purchased a plot at a priest's cemetery in Queens, and his will insisted that he be buried there. Now the Sheen family wants the Archbishop moved to Peoria for the sake of his cause. The appeals court ruling is expected in 2 to 6 weeks. When we return, Just how did Donald Trump pull off his unlikely populist victory in last year's election? Radio talk show host Laura Ingraham has a pretty good idea. She's here to talk about some news as well, and her new book, Billionaire at the Barricades, When the World Over, continues. Stay right there.
Who believes in the Constitution and who will fight for us, not against us, treat us like an ally, not an enemy, fight alongside with us. We are not the enemy, we're the people.
Welcome back to The World Over. That was my next guest speaking last year at the Republican National Convention. She is the most listened to woman in talk radio, a #1 New York Times bestselling author, and starting October 30th, she'll be the host of a brand new Fox News program, The Ingraham Angle. She joins me to discuss the news of the week. Her latest book, Billionaire at the Barricades, The Populist Revolution from Reagan to Trump, which released this week. Welcome back to the program, my friend Laura Ingraham.
I have a finger problem, so I have to shake you with the other hand. As awkward as it is.
Thank you for that opening, but I'm not taking it.
You should hang meat in this studio. It is freezing. Chris Edwards, what are you doing
here? The moment we bring the hook over, we're going to try that.
Yeah, I'll be on it.
Okay, that's right. If you don't answer these questions,
Billionaire on the meat hook.
That's right. Let's start with the NFL. I want to talk some contemporary issues first. Roger Goodell, commissioner of NFL, Goodell, finally issued this letter saying you have to stand during the national anthem to these players. Is that what this is?
Money talks. These guys were bleeding money. Millions of dollars, tens of millions, could have been hundreds of millions of dollars of damages. Americans want football. They love football. They want to go protest on their own time. No one cares. But when we tune into those games week after week, we expect to see people get on their feet for the national anthem, for the Pledge of Allegiance, all the things that we grew up as kids respecting should be respected.
Why did it take him all these weeks, Goodell?
To read his own rule book?
To read his handbook and put it in a letter to the owners.
Because he thought he was going to be protected by the elite culture that despises Donald Trump. He thought that all the people who dislike what Donald Trump is doing was going to rally to the NFL and all these guys who make millions and millions of dollars for playing a rough and tumble game. Well, guess what? He got caught in the tackle. And these were the NFL fans that said, well, it's not about Trump, but he's right about this. We love our country. It's not perfect, but like a lot of those Republicans in the stands, you think they sat or kneeled when Barack Obama was president and they didn't like what he was doing or what Bill Clinton was up to during impeachment? We all stood. He doesn't read his own rule book, but he knew it was in the rule book. He thought he was going to skate by with this. He didn't want to ruffle the feathers of the politically correct masses who were supporting the players. But once again, Trump kind of shot from the hip and taking this issue on, but he was right.
I want to shift to this Harvey Weinstein, of course, the founder of Miramax.
Yep.
This decades of abuse coming forward, all these people coming forward claiming they were sexually abused, yet you have a Hollywood establishment and a political establishment and a media establishment that seems to have known about this and didn't do anything about it.
They were joking about it on 30 Rock, a show I never watched. No. They were joking about it at the Oscars. They're making these veiled and not so veiled references.
And Ronan Farrow in this bite saying NBC spiked his story. Watch.
I walked into the door at the New Yorker with an explosively reportable piece that should have been public earlier, and immediately, obviously, the New Yorker recognized that, and it is not accurate to say that it was not reportable. In fact, there were multiple determinations that it was reportable at NBC.
And NBC has been virtually silent on this, right? I mean, except finally Rachel Maddow comes out and interviews Ronan.
After he published the piece in the New Yorker.
About her own network.
Yeah.
Now, I can't imagine that Rachel Maddow, as much as I disagree with her, would have liked spiking that story. I don't think so. I really don't think so. I don't agree with her on much, but I give her a lot of credit for actually saying, tell us what happened. Well, they were kind of caught at that point, for sure. But the lack of condemnation for days and days and days. You had to pull the Obamas and the Clintons to condemn Harvey Weinstein. The idea that someone is sophisticated with the reputation of Bill Clinton didn't know the reputation of Harvey Weinstein is like, you know, it's like saying that that Donald Trump doesn't like to golf. I mean, it's ridiculous. They all knew what was going on. Maybe not every lurid detail, but I think a lot of these actresses, the ones who were worth tens of millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars, well, they knew what was going on. A lot of them knew the really bad stuff that was going on. And they put their careers and they put money ahead of principles because Harvey paved the way. And let me tell you, Weinstein, I know for a fact because one of my good friends had to feel it and went through it. Harvey Weinstein has tried to destroy those who did question him and did get in his face about the way he was treating particular women. And he went to great lengths to destroy those careers. He
destroyed a lot of careers, blacklisted a lot of people.
Yeah, a lot of good people.
I want to move ahead to Billionaire at the Barricades. Yeah. This is really it's a history of the populist movement. It's also Laura Ingram's kind of front row seat on these historical moments. How did you see Trump's rise when so many people in this town completely missed it?
It was the same reason, I think, that all those years back at Dartmouth College, I gravitated toward Pat Buchanan. Buchanan was on the board of this newspaper I edited called the Dartmouth Review, which was a conservative weekly. We're a bunch of renegades. And when I started following Buchanan, he just seemed to make so much sense. The first time I met him was in 1982. It was my first visit to Washington. I went to his house. Dinesh D'Souza and I and a couple of others were all at Dartmouth. And listening to Buchanan, like, that's who I want to be. I agree with everything he says about trade, about all these issues. And I was like, gosh, looking around in his home office at all his pictures of presidents and his historical memorabilia and how much fun he was having. And I thought to myself, gosh, this is a career that's interesting, and I like him. And it was the same kind of bond with the working class people that Reagan had, clearly, when going all the way back to 76. And then, of course, in 1980, when he was able to win all those southern states. Even Nixon, stood for the silent majority and against big media. He didn't like the big media companies because they wielded too much power.
So what are, or who are, the barricades in your title of this book, Billionaire?
There are a lot of them. The establishment Republicans who don't want to go gently into that good night. They want to still run the GOP, and they don't. Of course, the Democrats, the media, Hollywood, the Chamber of Commerce, a lot of these big, lobbying groups and well-heeled organizations want to go back to the status quo, the pre-Trump era.
Populism is not an ideology. It's not necessarily conservative. I mean, Kingfish in Louisiana was a populist. Bill Clinton was a little bit of a populist.
Well, yeah, they did. But I would say the false populists are those whose policies result in bigger government. So Elizabeth Warren will talk a good game and try to come off as, I'm for the working person.
Right.
But every time you follow her train of thought to its logical conclusion with her ideas, she always ends up back at growing government. So it's bigger. It's bigger agencies. It's higher taxation. It's more redistribution. It's Obamacare. It's national health care system. But for populists today, it's a collusion between big government and big business. And you can throw in big media and big lobbyists and so forth. But it's that bigness that is working together against the interests of the average American. That's what it is. And so sometimes it'll be big banks that are the problem. Yeah. Other times it'll be big government. And in the 80s, it was frankly the big threat of the Soviet Union.
Well, you meet the big real estate tycoon, Donald Trump.
Yeah.
In 2002, you reveal in the book, at a lunch at Le Cirque.
Yeah.
What did you learn about him there that has persisted or lodged in your memory?
I was very... I was kind of really curious about him. I was introduced to him by a friend of ours, mutual friend, and I was like, oh, Donald Trump. I kind of rolled my eyes. Like, he was just such a caricature in my mind since I was a kid. And so we met and we started talking. I was like, oh, he's just going to talk about himself. Comes across as he's going to be a blowhard. All he did was ask about the media business, radio, how do you make money, how do you split commercial time, you tell me about your syndicator. And by the end of the lunch, like an hour and a half had gone by, and I was realizing I really didn't hear much about him. Although he did tip his hand at politics, and he was very much ahead of his time in the political world. And just our conversations about, back then it was Bush and the opportunity he had. He was very critical of getting into Iraq and all of that. And that was in 2002. So yeah. He was already, and I was like, no, the Iraq thing, it's going to be great. It's going to work out. We're going to, and he said, mark my word. He's like, this. I don't have a good feeling about this Iraq thing at all. And so he was ahead of him. He was ahead of me on that issue.
Now, in the book, you suggest he's got a great political instinct, a gut for politics. You salute his amazing agility to use these social media platforms to get the message out. Yet, the agenda is stalled. The agenda on Capitol Hill is stalled. The wall is stalled. Tax reform is stalled. Health care twice down in flames. Why is he unable to move his own agenda?
I think he made a mistake early on ceding all that territory, that legislative territory, to Paul Ryan and the gang. I think he kind of logically thought, well, they already voted for this 7 times. They have the blueprint. They're going to do this. When push came to shove, the experts, the tyranny of the experts, as I like to call it, the experts couldn't do it. So I think he was truly shocked that on this issue that they had focused on for 7 years, voted on, they couldn't deliver a victory. I think he was really stunned by that. That was a mistake. He should have really taken a much stronger hand in guiding that, stormed the country on it, not making that mistake now. Of course, today he was in Pennsylvania, gave a terrific speech about the American worker, focusing on them, tax reform, cutting taxes, making them fairer for everyone. He's in his element when he's talking about the working class. And so he made mistakes early on, but boy, is he back with a vengeance on taxes.
Let's shift to foreign policy. His first foreign trip, how is that Reagan-esque in your mind? What Trump did, which he doesn't get much credit for, but I was amazed at what he did that first
Reagan
trip.
saw that if you could capture the heart and soul of one of your allies in a very difficult time, as he saw with John Paul II and Maggie Thatcher, the concern about the Soviet Union, the need to spread freedom where freedom was really lost, he needed to bring the heart and soul of the people in on the equation. It couldn't just be a government solution. So what did Trump do? He decides to go and visit the homes of 3 of the major religions of the world. So he went to the Middle East. He goes to meet the Pope, and of course he starts in Saudi Arabia. He goes to Israel. So those 3 major religions are suddenly engaged with Donald Trump in this conversation about next steps in global policy and everything from the rise of Islam and the rise of Islamism, how to have a reformation. He urged and he demanded, frankly, the Muslim countries, all of them gathered. It was the first time we had that many gathered and spoken to by an American president. He said, "You got a job to do here." And I think that was important for all religions to engage together and try to improve life for the average person in all of these regions of the world. Very difficult. But he didn't get any credit for that. And we'll see how this all turns out. But I think so far on a whole host of issues with almost no legislative help, he's done a lot on trade, on moving forward his immigration priorities. He says he's going to build this wall. They're not getting DACA amnesty if they don't build this wall, if they don't have a border in place and enforcement in place. So I think, look, could he have done better? I guess if he had some more willing partners on Capitol Hill.
Final question. What a year this has been for you. Just in the last, let's say, few years, Dave Bratt, whom you supported, came out of nowhere, knocked Eric Cantor down. You were largely credited with taking, who was a leader on the Hill in the establishment Republican Party. There was also your GOP speech, rumor of a Senate run in Virginia, and now this new Fox show.
Right.
How do you see your role now?
I have to be a truth teller for the American people, I think. I know that sounds kind of hokey to say it, but I try to cut through these issues, pull back the curtain a little bit, show people what's really going on beyond the headline of the day or the left or right box of the moment. I'm trying to take people into these issues and address issues beyond politics. Politics is about this much of every person's life. And it's important, and it's going to be the core of the show. But there's a lot more. I mean, I'm a parent. I'm a cancer survivor. I had to deal with, my father and his death and the dementia and there's people are dealing with a lot of difficult problems. And I think they want, at the end of the day, have a safe space. When I say safe space, I mean almost to come home. I want to have like a home-like atmosphere, which will include fights.
Oh.
Because home
is where the fights are.
Home does have a little conflict, let's face it. But, it's hard to talk about what's the show going to be. Yeah. It's going to be like me, a little bit madcap at times, a little bit unpredictable, but, I think there'll be something in it for everyone. And I'm really looking forward to it. I'm very blessed, so I'm really happy to be here with you, though.
Well, I'm glad you're here.
Thanks
Billionaire
so
at the Barricades.
Ow, my hand.
Oh, stop it. I'm going to give you a hand.
Americans
like
with
this.
Disabilities Act violation.
Oh, please. She sprains a finger. You'd
I have
swear she needs a tourniquet.
look at this. Where's the camera? I have a very swollen finger.
How did this turn into the Health Channel?
Well,
just stop. We know
this
you're
is like
an
the
alien.
set of Cocoon here.
Yeah, we're going to send you right to the hospice
Okay.
care. Can I say the title of the book?
Please.
Billionaire at the Barricades, The Populist Revolution from Reagan to Trump
the hospice.
by Laura Ingraham is available at bookstores everywhere and online. For more details on Laura and her Billionaire at the Barricades book tour, visit her website, lauraingraham.com, and don't miss her new
Bette
show.
Midler will be singing with me in
you're
Philadelphia tomorrow
Hello,
night.
Dolly on the
We're
round.
doing a whole Philadelphia Freedom, and tomorrow Bette Midler's going to show up. Barbara Streisand's
Oh, everybody's coming to this event.
Cher is doing another comeback tour with me.
With you. Wonderful. And
fun.
don't miss her Fox show, The Ingraham Angle, which will probably be a little bit like this
Yes,
segment.
a little odd.
Monday through Friday, 10 p.m. Eastern, starting October 30th. When we return, the Trump administration has come out with new immigration rules. What does this mean for the Dreamers? Congressman Sean Duffy will discuss this and much more when The World Over continues. Stay right there. Stop laughing.
Sometimes I feel like he's on a reality show of some kind, you know, when he's talking about these big foreign policy issues. And, he doesn't realize that, that we could be heading towards World War III with the kind of comments that he's making.
Welcome back to The World Over Live. That was Senator Bob Corker of Tennessee, chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, in an interview with the New York Times earlier this week. The president had a back-and-forth Twitter war with Corker before that. Is there a schism in the GOP that could imperil Trump's agenda? To discuss, we're joined by member of the House Financial Services Committee, Wisconsin Congressman Sean Duffy. Welcome back.
Raymond, good to be with you.
Now, the president has only 52 votes in the Senate.
That's right.
Is it wise to pick fights with a member of your caucus when you're already down John McCain for most votes? Now you got Corker off the map. Is that smart going into a tax negotiation?
Well, first of all, I think to pick a public fight with the guys whose vote you need is not the smartest strategy. But I think if you look at Donald Trump, he's frustrated. You have a Senate that can't get anything done. We have 300 bills that are sitting on their doorstep that they can't move on. Wow. It is the most dysfunctional body, and they are standing in the way of the Donald Trump agenda. So I think he is frustrated. He's pushing back on Corker. But, I mean, Corker making these pop-off comments against Donald Trump starting World War III is absolutely off base. I mean, Donald Trump, in regard to North Korea, is making more progress, getting our allies to engage on North Korea, getting China to engage with North Korea. China, for the first time, is going to join us in going after financial institutions that are laundering money from North Korea. This hasn't happened in the past. So Trump taking a different strategy, yes, a little unconventional.
But do you think the tough talk has actually worked? Do your colleagues think we're on the precipice of World War III?
He's making more progress than past administrations. And what you see the experts want, they want more of Barack Obama or George Bush, which is giving them weapons of mass destruction and missiles that can deliver them to our shores. That strategy hasn't worked. And to shake it up the way Donald Trump has and really kind of put the rest of the world on notice that what North Korea is doing is endangering the safety and the security of the rest of the world. That's been a great play on Donald Trump's part, and he gets credit for all of that.
Okay. On Wednesday, NBC News reported that President Trump allegedly asked for a tenfold increase in the U.S. nuclear arsenal during a meeting with military officials this past summer. MSNBC's Joe Scarborough claimed we may be closer now to nuclear war than at any other time since the Cuban Missile Crisis. This is he and Mike Barnicle. Watch.
In October of 1962, both in Moscow and in Washington, D.C., you had rational actors. And I don't think you can say comfortably with any assurance that today in Washington, D.C., that we have a rational actor.
No, we don't.
So, Willie Geist, where are the Republicans?
Where are the Republicans? He claims that you in Congress, have to be a check on Donald Trump. Do you and your caucus, do members of Congress feel that way? That you have to be a check on the president?
I think well, first of all, we are a check on the president.
Okay, but is he too rogue, that like he's not a rational player?
They said the same things about Ronald Reagan, that this was a cowboy who wanted World War III, but he understood that you ascertain peace through strength. And Donald Trump understands that America has to project strength to make sure everyone stays in line around the world. And so they might not like the delivery, they might not like the language, but the concepts are tried and tested, and they actually work.
Growing the U.S. arsenal, that would violate all kinds of treaties that every president since Reagan has signed. I mean, it's not something he's really considering. It may have been a question about how big is the arsenal? What do we have? Do we have something to strike it if North Korea attacks us? I mean, at that time, remember back in the summer, little Kim was sending the missiles over Japan.
Little Rocket Man.
Little Rocket Man.
That's right. So I think what President Trump is doing is making sure that he has the right assets, the right tools, the right armaments to protect our country. And you know that if he thinks we have a bad deal, he's going to try to renegotiate a better deal. And what he's doing, Raymond, is he's looking out for the American people. This is the first president in a long time that puts my constituents first, more so than anyone else in the world. And that's what we want from an American president. And his first job is to protect us, to keep us safe. And that comes through a strong military and making sure we have a sufficient deterrent to the rest of the world.
Congressman Duffy, there are a lot of upset media people today.
Oh, I know.
Because yesterday, President Trump, hearing this report about wanting to increase the nuclear arsenal, which he, I think, is denying, he tweeted out, with all the fake news coming out of NBC and the networks, at what point is it appropriate to challenge their license? Bad for the country. Now, for 2 days, media folks have been saying this undermines the First Amendment. It is a terrible precedent. You would say what?
Well, first of all, I would agree with them. We want to have a vigorous and free news organization that keeps everyone with a check and a balance. However, I don't think they've been fair. But that's not the requirement. They cannot be fair. Donald Trump can push back at them, but we want to make sure they can report. And if you look at where the American people are, I don't think it's fake news, but I think they tell one side of the story. They don't tell the complete story, and the American people understand that. Don't take away their license. Push back. Fight back.
Well, there's no license to take away.
Right,
all they own are the local affiliates. The only thing licensed are the local affiliates. NBC, the network, and the MSNBC, the cable, they're not regulated with a federal license.
The bottom line is, it's foolish to start this fight with them, and frankly, I think in many respects he's won the debate about are they fair on the reporting of Donald Trump and his administration. And so you see them losing a lot of viewership. They lose conservatives like myself, and frankly, that's odd to me. If you actually were fair in the way you report the news, that space that's in the middle of fair reporting, that's where most Americans are. They would clean up. By the way, it would be nice if they were so concerned about the First Amendment in regard to schools, that we were able to have a fair debate and conversation, because in our schools, you understand, they care about diversity of sexes and sexual preferences and races and sometimes religions.
Right.
But you can't have diversity of political thought. That gets shut down. Conservatives don't have a space in the American university system. So I'd love them to fight that fight on our behalf, because the country would be better off.
Let's talk about another big story this week. The Supreme Court refused to hear the case dealing with the president's travel ban, meaning his travel ban stands as it is. Your take on this, and what does it mean when some, even those in the church, are saying this is not a welcoming policy? When you're saying this, people from this country and this country can't come in now, you're undermining our values, Sean Duffy and President Trump.
It was more of a pause. I mean, the travel ban is a misnomer that the president uses himself.
Right, but it's a handle.
It is a pause, and he's going to go through extreme vetting. When you have people from different parts of the world that have extremist viewpoints, and we don't have good data and good records on who they are, again, the president's first job is to protect the American people and to make sure that we only let people into this country who love our country, that want to be part of our country, that want to adapt and be Americans. That's the president's first responsibility. And so I'm proud of this policy. Now, again, we want all kinds of people to come in that love our country. But again, extreme vetting from some really rough parts of the world, that's a smart policy because I want to keep our people safe, and so too does Donald Trump.
And it's focused on the people and their welfare, the American people and their welfare.
That's right. That's right. I mean, we see when radicals take up arms against innocent people, the devastation is immense, and Donald Trump, his warm and pure heart can't handle that.
Oh, isn't that nice of you? Now you can read his warm and pure heart.
I can. Nice I looked into it. I peered and I saw.
Very nice. Right. Let's talk for a second about this immigration deal. The president reached out to Nancy Pelosi, whom I know you adore, and Senator Schumer. They got a temporary budget passed, Chuck and Nancy. Then he turned to them to find some relief for the so-called dreamers, these kids who were brought here through no fault of their own. They find themselves here. They've been here for decades in some cases. They're not little tots. They're 20 and 30-year-olds. To find a legislative relief for them, he threw down a list of absolute non-negotiables, things that he must have for any DACA deal. And they included full funding and building of the wall, ending federal subsidies to sanctuary cities, E-Verify being put into place. Does this destroy any hope of a bipartisan deal?
So first, take a step back. And the president gave an extension of the DACA policy to allow Congress to actually act. And that is the right policy because the president doesn't set immigration law, the Congress does. So he was right on doing that, putting the ball in our court. That's right. And so I think that this is a negotiating position of the president. I see this as actually brilliant. If we can take care of the kids, I mean, kids, this is the only country they know. Let's treat them fairly.
Well, they're 30-years and 35-years. They're not. It's not like they're in swaddling clothes.
But if you came here at 3 or 5 years old, you don't know Guatemala. You weren't raised in Guatemala. You're an American. So I think the sense of fairness of the American people. We should help these.
Find some way to normalize their status.
But what it does, Raymond, if you get border security with it, and by the way, if he doesn't get border security, his base will blow up. It will not happen. Border security, partial wall, partial technology. We get that done. That's the pathway. That's the secret sauce that you need to get actual immigration reform done. Because then with a secure border, we know that, once you deal with those who've come here unlawfully, not the non-dreamers, but the people who are working, that have families that are afraid that they're going to get arrested when they go to the grocery store, they can't go back to their home country because they can't get back into America. We want to treat them fairly. If you get border security, you're then able to have a policy that says, let's deal with those folks. And this is the last time we have to do it because we have the secure border. We're not going to have dreamers in 20 or 25 years from now. We're not going to have a new whole set of people who are here unlawfully. We can deal with these people the last time because our border is secure. And by the way, Raymond, this is a different topic, but meth and heroin is devastating our communities. My community, it's crushing us. And all of those drugs come across the southern border. So it's just not border security about people. It's about drugs and guns and human trafficking that border lends itself to, that we can snuff out, that I think helps the country as a whole on a whole bunch of different levels, including controlling drug inflow.
What if that wall is not built? Laura Ingraham, who we just had on, claims if that wall isn't built, you all will not get reelected and Donald Trump will lose in 2020. You think that's...
So, first of all, Democrats, I don't think, are in opposition behind the scenes to border security. If you call it a wall, all of a sudden they have a lot of problems. So we might have to find a tactful way to have funding that's not called a wall, but allows Donald Trump to build a wall. So how we navigate the language of what this is, but I think we have to have a structure in certain parts. You're right. And if we don't do that, that was one of the president's fundamental promises that he made. And if you don't do a wall, you don't do border security, and if you can't get tax reform done, why does anyone come out and vote for a Republican?
Right.
Why do they join us?
So what are the chances? Give me the over and under on the border wall and tax reform, and while we're at it, health care.
So I would say 75% on border security, which means a partial wall.
Through that Senate.
Yeah, I do because it's in conjunction with DACA.
Okay.
So the DACA,
it's got to be tied to the DACA
the leverage point that gets you the wall. So I think that can happen. In regard to tax reform, the Senate has been so harshly criticized when they've gone home in the August break. People understand that they're the ones to fault, that they've made a promise that they'd get health care reform done. They didn't do it. They understand that they have to get tax reform done, and the pressure on them is so great. They understand that they are all going to lose their seats if they can't make this happen. I think the motivation and dedication to tax reform is far greater than what you saw in health care, because the American people are so angry at them. So I'm very bullish on tax reform. Health care, they've tried, what, 3 times? They can't get it done. But there's a lot of people in Arizona, where John McCain comes from, 115% increases in premiums in 3.5 years of Obamacare. In my state, 93% increases over 3.5 years. People can't afford this, Raymond. And their salary increase doesn't come in the form of a raise in their check. It goes to their premium increase. Right. This is hurting people. And so I hope we can come back to it after tax reform. But I got to tell you, I can't say that I think that over 50% that's going to get done.
Congressman Duffy, thank you as always for being here and being so candid.
God bless.
When we return, Christmas is just around the corner. Can you believe this? And do we have a gift for you? Sister Joseph Andrew of the Dominican Sisters of Mary will tell us about their brand new Christmas CD when the world over continues. Who doesn't love singing nuns? Stay with us.
Love singing.
Everyone. That was the Dominican Sisters of Mary from their latest Christmas album. My next guest is the Vocations Director and Vicar for this order of chart-topping nuns. What is it about the voices of these religious sisters that have conquered the classical music charts and the hearts of fans all over the world? Here to tell us about their latest CD, JESU, Joy of Man's Desiring, Christmas with the Dominican Sisters of Mary. From Sony and de Montfort Music is Sister Joseph Andrew of the Dominican Sisters of Mary, Mother of the Eucharist in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Thank you for being with us, Sister.
Thank you, Raymond.
Now,
Great to be here. Thank you.
This is the 20th anniversary year of the order, Sister. Was this Christmas CD an intentional celebration of that milestone?
Do you know, it was on a couple scores. First of all, so many people have asked us for this for so many years because we've put out 2 other CDs, and they just kept saying, what about a Christmas? You know, I think there's something magical about Christmas. And then the other thing is we said, okay, we will do it this year in honor of our 20th anniversary. Yes.
Yeah. Tell us briefly about the founding of the order. I remember Mother Assumpta, one of you were among the 4 founders of this order. You all were headed down to New York.
That's
you were headed to New York to found the order there. And then you all made a pit stop. Tell me briefly about that pit stop and how it changed your life.
Yes, you're correct. We were headed to New York because Cardinal O'Connor, to found a new community, you need a cardinal, really, or a bishop that really helps walk you through the canonical process and is an intermediary between you and Rome. And so Cardinal O'Connor was a good friend of Mother Assumpta since she had been with him for a while to help him found the Sisters of Life earlier. And when he heard that we really believed the Holy Spirit was asking this of us, then he said, well, then let me be your cardinal or your guide through it. So we went to New York. But on the way, Raymond, as you were referring to, we stopped in Ann Arbor because Mother Assumpta, very well known, so she was also a good friend of Tom Monahan's here in Ann Arbor, of Domino's Pizza. And so we stopped just to see if we would be able to say hello to him. Sister John Dominic in particular had picked up a morning newspaper, and he was on the front page, and that gave us the idea. So as the Holy Spirit works. In any case,
I thought maybe
so we
Sister
stopped
wanted
to
a
say
pizza.
hello to him. Well, actually, we did ask for a few, free pizza pets. Also because, I mean, my gosh, we needed whatever we could get at that point in time.
I don't blame you.
But in any case, so after he heard the goal and the hopes, then he kind of followed us quietly, but it wasn't long before he called up to New York to talk to Mother Assumpta and say, I believe this is going to happen. I think this is God's will. Would you ever consider coming to Ann Arbor, Michigan, and that he would help us actually build a mother house, which was an incredible, absolutely most generous offer to us that we couldn't believe. So with the Cardinal, we prayed about it and finally made the determination that this must be God speaking. And so then we came to Ann Arbor and began our mother house right away, and vocations started coming immediately.
And now you've got 40 sisters, you've got houses all over the place, you teach all over the country. Now, you and the sisters have assembled quite a recording here, this new Christmas recording. It's classic hymns, it's carols, but there are also some other compositions here, original compositions. How did you decide which tracks to include?
That's right.
And which to leave out?
That was really the hard part, because when you get two of us together, we have a lot of ideas. So being as there were about a dozen of us working on this, we have so much music in our community. Our community is very rich in the good, the true, the beautiful. And so the beautiful is very important in the Dominican order, because St. Dominic's casting of the order, which he would found 800 years ago, really highlights beauty, and in particular in liturgical prayer. And so our liturgical office and our Mass, etc., we have a lot of music. And music, I always say, we use it to pray and we use it to play. So our sisters are very musical. So it was a big decision which ones to come up with. But we knew we did want a wide range of eras. So we begin in the 5th century and we end with the present age to our written by our sisters. And then we also wanted it to be international, so we have 10 different countries that the music does come from. So it's a very eclectic approach to beautiful Christmas music. That means a great deal to our sisters.
Now, Sister, this is what Sister Peter Joseph had to say about how you all chose the songs in this wonderful collection of music, Christmas with the Dominican Sisters of Mary. Watch this.
When I was selecting the music for the recording, I wanted to give the chance to experience Christmas at the Mother House, in a sense, to experience that prayerful and yet joyous experience of Christmas.
We imagine it as, since we can't let everyone into our mother house for midnight Mass and the Christmas Masses, it's kind of our way of bringing them in. So I imagine someone sitting with the family by a cozy fireplace at Christmas and just listening to this beautiful music and being drawn into hopefully contemplative prayer, and certainly the true meaning of Christmas itself. And again, because so many people had asked for this, we knew that they really wanted to be a part of the Christmas that we're able and blessed to be able to celebrate with this music.
You have said in the past about your other recordings that this really, it is a reflection of your daily community life. Is that the case? Are these the songs you actually sing during the Christmas season in the Mother House?
Oh, they are. Yes, these songs. Okay, so we practiced maybe 2 days, and this is just got the sisters together that we had chosen to be on this, and we knew we wanted a smaller number, and then in 2.5 days it was recorded and it was done. So it's very much just who we are. It's you know, it comes as a prayer because we pray this music, and so we impart this as a prayer to those who will hear it. Yeah.
Sister, your last classical CD, Mater Eucharisti, topped the Billboard classical charts, the classical traditional charts for weeks back in 2013. Did that success change your order in any way, or did it raise the expectations of what you had to produce or imagined you would produce in this CD?
Our expectations are always as high as we can possibly get them, because we just give God all that we've got and all that we have, and we trust Him to use it the way that He sees it as best. So I can't say that it really changed anything. It made us very happy that people would appreciate it. And also, I think it's a sign of hope in the world today. You know, and the Holy Father is kind of on a theme right now of hope and not complaining and finding the good. And I think that, you know, the music really does speak to the interior of a person, and it raises us all up. And it overflows from joy in our community. It has a great deal of joy. And so, yeah, I wouldn't say it really changed anything. The first one didn't.
Sister, I want to give people a little taste of this CD. This is Sleep Little Jesus. Listen to this. Now that is a beautiful Polish lullaby. There are also original arrangements here, Sister. Who did the arrangements, first of all, on this entire CD?
Well, the sisters did, various sisters. We worked together to do this. Yes, we have a lot of talent in our community. Musically, it's just kind of overflowing. So not only are some of the hymns a cappella, but some of them are the small chamber orchestrations, and we did those ourselves. So the sisters play all the instruments as well. Yeah.
Sister, I noticed there are a lot of classical hymns here, some of them very recognizable, and it's the Carol of the Bells, Away in a Manger. There are also a few original compositions like Snowflakes. Now, I didn't expect snowflakes from a religious community, you know, reindeer and snowmen. Why snowflakes, Sister Joseph?
Because I just love snow, and because there is such a simplicity that comes through that particular message. And so the whole thing is meditation on on the birth of our Lord and the simplicity that He brought to the world. And yeah, so Raymond, I hope you like it, because I wrote that one.
I loved it. No, it was beautiful. And you're right. It does. It actually. I mean, I was jesting a little bit, but the snowflakes. It does remind you of the beauty of God's creation that we often take for granted, and that stillness and that peace that this season is really all about. Tell me finally, what are you hearing back from those who embraced your last effort, and what do you hope people will receive from listening to this new CD?
That's beautiful questions. What are we hearing back from those who embraced the last? We want more music from the sisters, and we would really love a Christmas CD. We want to be a part of your Christmas in your convent, in your mother house. And then what do we hope? We really hope that this is a way of bringing in so many people to share the blessings and the beauty that we have by God's mercy and goodness to our community at Christmas.
Sister Joseph Andrew, thank you so much for being here. JESU, the joy of man's desiring Christmas with the Dominican Sisters of Mary is available on Friday, October 13th at music stores everywhere, online at Amazon and iTunes, and at the Dominican Sisters of Mary website. That's at sistersofmary.org. Sister Joseph Andrew, Merry Christmas. That is all the time we have. Until next week, the show continues on Facebook and Twitter. Like me on Facebook, follow me on Twitter. The links are at RaymondArroyo.com. Also, sign up for my e-blast. Always sending you interesting things there. Until next week, we'll be scouting the world over for all that is seen and unseen. On behalf of the staff and crew of EWTN News, thank you for watching. I'm Raymond Arroyo from Washington, D.C. Bye now.